The spreadsheet numbers blurred together as I rubbed my eyes for the third time in 10 minutes. Another late night at the office, another pile of quarterly reports that somehow became my problem. My phone buzzed against the cluttered desk. Don't wait up. Working late again? M. I stared at the text from my wife Marta, feeling that familiar knot in my stomach. Working late had become her favorite excuse lately. At 49, I'd learned to recognize the signs, but I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. Maybe that's what 15 years of marriage does to a guy? Makes you see shadows where there aren't any. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't from Marta. It was a screenshot from someone named Anonymous Friend, showing a group chat I wasn't part of. The participants' names made my blood run cold. Marta, her sister Victoria, and several of her advertising agency friends. The conversation was about me. Poor Evan still thinks that tiny diamond ring was romantic, Marta had written, followed by a crying, laughing emoji. Victoria's response hit like a punch to the gut. Girl, you deserve so much better than that bargain bin proposal. Jake would never be so cheap. Jake. I knew that name. Jake Morrison, the hotshot junior executive at Marta's agency. 28 years old, drives a BMW, wears suits that cost more than my monthly salary. The conversation continued with increasingly cruel details about our marriage, our finances, even intimate moments I thought were private between us. They discussed my performance issues, like I was some broken appliance they were trying to return. The final message in the screenshot made my hands shake. Don't worry, sweetie. This weekend at the lake house will make you forget all about boring old Evan. I sat back in my chair, the office suddenly feeling too small, too bright, too real. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like angry wasps. My wife of 15 years, the mother of my two kids, was not just cheating on me. She was humiliating me to her friends while she did it. The anonymous sender had included a note. Thought you should know what they're really saying. You deserve better. I screenshot everything and saved it to a hidden folder on my phone. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I laughed. Not a happy laugh, but the kind of bitter chuckle that comes when you realize you've been the punchline to a joke everyone else was in on. Tiny diamond ring, I muttered to myself. Well, Marta, let's see how you like some real diamonds, the kind that cut. The next morning, Marta was already gone when I woke up. Her coffee cup sat in the sink, lipstick stain on the rim, a darker shade than she usually wore. I found myself cataloging these details like evidence, which I suppose they were. Our house in suburban Minneapolis felt different now, like I was seeing it through new eyes. The family photos on the mantle looked staged. The world's best wife mug I'd bought her last Christmas sat unused in the back of the cabinet. Even our golden retriever, Charlie, seemed to sense the tension. He kept following me around with those worried dog eyes. I called in sick to work, first time in 3 years. Instead of heading to my cubicle at the financial planning firm, I decided to do some investigating of my own. Marta's purse sat on the kitchen counter. She'd left in such a hurry that she'd forgotten it. Inside, along with the usual collection of receipts and lip balm, I found something interesting. A key fob for a BMW. Not our Honda Civic. A BMW. The receipts told their own story. Expensive dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together. A hotel charge from last weekend when she'd claimed to be at a work conference. A jewelry store receipt for something called a promise ring that cost more than we spent on groceries in a month. My phone rang. It was my daughter Emma calling from college. Hey Dad, is everything okay? Mom's been posting some weird stuff on Facebook. What kind of weird stuff? Just, I don't know, quotes about finding yourself and not settling for less than you deserve. And she's been tagging Jake from her work in a bunch of photos. It's kind of embarrassing. My 20-year-old daughter was embarrassed by her mother's behavior. That stung almost as much as the betrayal itself. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. Your mom's just going through a phase. Dad, you don't sound good. Are you and Mom having problems? I looked at myself in the hallway mirror. Gray stubble, tired eyes, wearing the same shirt I'd slept in. When had I become this guy? When had I become someone worth leaving? Everything's fine, Emma. Focus on your studies. After hanging up, I made a decision. I was going to that lake house. The address from Marta's GPS history led me to Lake Minnetonka, about an hour outside the city. The house wasn't hard to find. It was the kind of place that screamed money, with its stone facade and perfectly manicured lawn sloping down to a private dock. Jake's BMW sat in the circular driveway like it owned the place. I parked down the road and walked back, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Through the large windows, I could see them. Marta was wearing a red dress I'd never seen before, laughing at something Jake was saying. He had his hand on her lower back in a way that was unmistakably intimate. They looked happy, relaxed, like they belonged together. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes, watching my wife be more animated and joyful than I'd seen her in years, with another man, in another man's house, wearing clothes I hadn't bought for her. The rational part of my brain told me to leave, to confront her at home, to handle this like a mature adult. But the part of me that had been humiliated in group chats and lied to for months had a different idea. I walked over to Jake's BMW and pulled out my keys, one long, satisfying scratch along the passenger side. Then, I took out my phone and left a note under his windshield wiper. Nice car, shame about the owner's taste in married women. A concerned neighbor. As I walked back to my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Satisfaction. It was a small victory, but it was mine. My phone buzzed with a text from that anonymous number again. You have no idea what you're up against. Victoria isn't just Marta's sister. She's the one pulling the strings. Meet me tomorrow at Murphy's Bar on Hennepin. 7 p.m., come alone. I stared at the message for a long time. Victoria, Marta's older sister, had never liked me. She'd made that clear from day one of our relationship. But orchestrating an affair? That seemed extreme, even for her. Then again, a week ago, I would have said the same thing about my wife cheating on me. Murphy's Bar was the kind of place that hadn't been updated since the 80s. Dark wood, dim lighting, and the lingering smell of cigarettes from back when smoking indoors was still legal. I arrived early and claimed a corner booth where I could watch the door. At exactly 7 o'clock, a woman walked in. Not at all what I'd expected. She was maybe 35, athletic build, short brown hair, wearing jeans and a leather jacket. She looked around the bar until she spotted me, then walked over with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. You must be Evan, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. I'm Louise. I work at Marta's agency. You're the one who's been sending me the messages? She nodded. I've been watching this whole thing unfold for months. Victoria comes by the office regularly, always whispering with Marta, always asking about you. At first I thought she was just being a supportive sister, but then I started noticing patterns. Louise pulled out her phone and showed me a series of screenshots, text conversations between Victoria and Marta, dating back almost a year. Victoria's been feeding Marta lines about how she deserves better, how you're holding her back, how she should explore her options, Louise explained. She introduced Marta to Jake at a company party, then kept creating opportunities for them to be alone together. But why? What does Victoria get out of destroying my marriage? Louise's expression darkened. Revenge. You cost her a lot of money 5 years ago, and she's never forgotten it. I searched my memory. 5 years ago? Then it hit me. Victoria's ex-husband had tried to get me to invest his pension in some sketchy real estate deal. I'd refused and advised him against it. When he took my advice instead of his wife's, Victoria lost out on a significant commission. The deal later turned out to be fraudulent, and several investors lost everything. She's been planning this for years, Louise continued. Marta thinks she's having a spontaneous affair, but Victoria has been manipulating every step. The lake house? Victoria rented it. Jake's sudden interest in Marta? Victoria suggested he pursue her for a promotion. Even that group chat you saw, Victoria started it specifically to humiliate you. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed made me sick. My marriage hadn't just fallen apart, it had been systematically demolished by someone with a 5-year grudge. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I've seen what Victoria does to people. She destroyed another marriage at the agency last year. She gets off on it, and because Louise hesitated, because I know what it's like to have someone you trust betray you. She showed me one more screenshot. A text from Victoria to Marta from earlier that day. Phase 2 begins next week. Make sure Evan finds the divorce papers, where he can't miss them. Jake's already picked out the ring. Divorce papers. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning to end my marriage and start a new life together. With my money, my house, and probably custody of my kids. I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. Not anger exactly, but something more focused, more dangerous. Louise, I said, how would you like to help me return the favor? Over the next week, Louise and I met 3 more times. She was a goldmine of information about the inner workings of Marta's agency, and more importantly, about Jake's weaknesses. Turns out, the golden boy wasn't so golden. He had a cocaine habit that he funded by padding his expense reports. He'd been skimming money from client accounts to pay for his lifestyle. And he had a gambling problem that had him in debt to some very unpleasant people. The only reason he hasn't been fired yet is because he brings in big clients, Louise explained over coffee at a diner near my office. But if those clients knew what he was really like, how do we expose him without it looking like it's coming from me? Louise smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Leave that to me. I have friends at competing agencies who would love to poach Marta's clients. All they need is the right ammunition. While Louise worked her contacts in the advertising world, I focused on documenting everything. I installed a tracking app on our shared family computer and started monitoring Marta's online activity. I photographed every receipt, every unexplained charge, every late-night work session. The evidence was overwhelming. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, jewelry, even a weekend trip to Chicago that she'd claimed was a family emergency with her sick aunt. Her aunt who, when I called to check on her, was perfectly healthy and had no idea what I was talking about. But the most damaging evidence came from Marta herself. She'd been so confident that I was clueless that she'd gotten careless. Her laptop was still logged into her personal email account, where I found months of correspondence with Jake. Explicit photos, detailed plans for their future together, and most importantly, conversations about how they were going to divide up my assets in the divorce. They'd already picked out a house. They'd discussed which of my retirement accounts would be easiest to access. Jake had even joked about keeping Charlie, our dog, because Evan's probably too depressed to take care of a pet anyway. Reading those emails, I felt the last of my sympathy for Marta evaporate. This wasn't a woman who'd made a mistake or fallen out of love. This was someone who'd coldly calculated how to destroy my life for her own benefit. My phone buzzed with a text from Louise. It's done. Jake's biggest client just pulled their account. Rumors are spreading about his financial irregularities. Should hit the fan by tomorrow morning. I smiled and typed back, Phase 2? Already in motion. Hope you're ready for some fireworks. The fireworks started at 6:30 a.m. when my phone rang. It was Marta, and she was screaming. What did you do? What the hell did you do, Evan? I sat up in bed, feigning confusion. What are you talking about? Where are you? I'm at Jake's apartment. His career's ruined. Someone leaked information about his clients, his finances, everything. They're saying he might face criminal charges. That's terrible, I said, not bothering to hide the satisfaction in my voice. Maybe he should have been more careful about his business practices. There was a long pause. When Marta spoke again, her voice was different, colder. You know, don't you? Know what? Don't play dumb, Evan. You know about Jake and me. I got out of bed and walked to the kitchen, taking my time, let her sweat. Oh, you mean your affair? Yeah, I know about that. Hard to miss when you're posting about it on social media and spending my money on hotel rooms. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You've been cheating on me for months, planning to divorce me, and humiliating me to your friends while you do it. The only question is whether you figured out this was all Victoria's idea, or if you're still too stupid to see you're being manipulated. Another long pause. What do you want? I want you to come home. We need to talk. I can't leave Jake right now. He needs me. Jake, I said. is about to be arrested for embezzlement. His debts are being called in by some very dangerous people, and his cocaine dealer just got busted and is looking to make deals with the police. Trust me, the last place you want to be is anywhere near Jake Morrison. I wasn't sure about the cocaine dealer part, but Louise had mentioned Jake's drug problem, and it sounded believable. How do you know all this? I know lots of things, Marta. I know about the lake house Victoria rented for you. I know about the group chat where you mock our marriage. I know about the divorce papers you've been hiding in your car. And I know about the ring Jake bought with money he stole from his clients. I could hear her breathing getting faster. Good, let her panic. Come home, I repeated. We'll discuss this like adults. Unless you'd rather explain to Emma and our son why their mother is dating a criminal. She hung up on me. 20 minutes later, I heard her car in the driveway. Marta looked terrible. Her makeup was smeared, her hair was a mess, and she was wearing the same red dress from the lake house, now wrinkled and stained. She stood in our kitchen like a stranger, looking around at 15 years of shared life like she'd never seen it before. Sit down, I said, gesturing to the kitchen table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together. She remained standing. I want a divorce. I'm sure you do. Unfortunately, adultery tends to complicate divorce proceedings, especially when it involves financial fraud. I didn't know about Jake's problems. Maybe not. But you knew about the stolen credit card numbers he used to pay for your hotel rooms. You knew about the client money he spent on your jewelry. And you definitely knew about the fake business trips you've been claiming for tax deductions. None of that was necessarily true, but Marta's face went white, so I'd hit close to the mark. I could go to prison, she whispered. You could. Or you could help me with something. She looked up at me with hope in her eyes. Even now, even after everything, she thought she could manipulate me into saving her. What do you want? I want Victoria. For the first time since she'd walked in, Marta looked genuinely confused. Victoria? What does my sister have to do with this? Your sister orchestrated this entire affair. She's been manipulating you for almost a year, feeding you lies about our marriage, introducing you to Jake, even paying for your romantic getaways. This isn't your midlife crisis, Marta. This is Victoria's revenge against me. I showed her the screenshots Louise had given me, the text messages, the planning, the step-by-step destruction of our marriage. I watched Marta's face as she realized she'd been played just as much as I had. She told me you were having an affair, Marta said quietly. She said she'd seen you with another woman at a hotel downtown. She showed me photos, fake photos, or photos of someone who looks like me. Victoria's been planning this for 5 years, ever since I cost her money on that real estate scam. Marta sank into a chair, finally understanding the scope of what had been done to both of us. What do you want me to do? There's a party tomorrow night. Victoria's hosting it at the lake house, the same one where you've been meeting Jake. She's invited all her society friends, all your coworkers, everyone who's been part of this humiliation. I want you to get me into that party. And then what? I smiled, and for the first time in months, it was a real smile. Then we give Victoria exactly what she's been giving us. Public humiliation, destroyed relationships, and the kind of scandal that follows you for years. What about Jake? Jake's problems are just beginning. By tomorrow night, he'll be lucky if he's not in jail. Marta looked around our kitchen again, seeing it differently now. After this is over, can we fix this? Our marriage? I looked at my wife of 15 years, the mother of my children, the woman who'd shared my bed and my dreams and my bank account, the woman who'd been ready to throw it all away for a criminal with a cocaine habit and a gambling problem. No, I said, we can't. The lake house looked different at night, lit up with string lights and filled with the sound of laughter and clinking glasses. Victoria had outdone herself. This wasn't just a party, it was a statement, a celebration of her victory over the boring suburban husband who dared to cross her. I arrived with Marta, who'd spent the day making phone calls to ensure Jake wouldn't be there. He was, according to her last update, meeting with lawyers and trying to figure out how to avoid prison time. His cocaine dealer had indeed been arrested, and Jake's name was all over the investigation. Evan! Victoria greeted me with a hug and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. What a surprise to see you here. I thought you'd be home watching Netflix and feeling sorry for yourself. Wouldn't miss it, I said. Marta told me this was going to be the party of the year. Victoria was dressed to kill in a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her husband, a quiet accountant named Richard, stood nearby looking uncomfortable. He'd always been decent to me, and I almost felt bad about what was going to happen to him by association. The party was full of people I recognized: Marta's coworkers, Victoria's society friends, neighbors from their upscale part of town, all of them looking at me with barely concealed pity or amusement. The clueless husband who didn't know his wife was cheating on him. Louise appeared at my elbow, dressed elegantly and carrying a glass of wine. To anyone watching, she looked like just another party guest. Everything's ready, she murmured. The speakers are synced to my phone. Just give me the signal. I nodded and made my way through the crowd, making small talk and accepting condolences about my difficult situation with a smile. Everyone wanted to know where Jake was. Several people made jokes about my wife's work husband that made it clear the affair was an open secret among their social circle. At exactly 10 o'clock, I clinked a knife against my wine glass to get everyone's attention. If I could have everyone's attention, I called out, I'd like to make a toast. The crowd quieted down, expecting some pathetic speech about forgiveness or moving forward. Victoria smiled triumphantly from across the room. I want to thank Victoria for hosting this wonderful party, I began, and for being such a devoted sister to my wife. Some of you might not know just how devoted she's been. I nodded to Louise, who tapped her phone. Suddenly, Victoria's voice filled the room through the house's sound system. The key is making him think it's Marta's idea. If he suspects I'm involved, the whole plan falls apart. The crowd looked confused. Victoria's face went pale. Jake's voice came through next. What if he finds out about the hotel receipts? Victoria again. He won't. Evan's too stupid and too trusting. By the time he figures out what's happening, Marta will have half his assets and you'll have a promotion. The room was dead silent now. Everyone was looking back and forth between Victoria, Marta, and me. Some people were starting to understand what they were hearing. The audio continued with more damning excerpts from months of recorded conversations. Victoria orchestrating the affair, Jake discussing which of my accounts would be easiest to drain, Marta laughing about my pathetic attempts to save our marriage. But the final clip was the most devastating. Victoria's voice, crystal clear. The best part is that Evan actually thinks this is about love. He has no idea this is payback for costing me that real estate commission. By the time I'm done with him, he'll have nothing left. Victoria was frantically trying to get to the sound system, but Louise had hidden the phone well and the audio kept playing. More clips, more evidence, more proof that everyone at this party had been complicit in a calculated campaign to destroy my life. When the audio finally stopped, the silence was deafening. So, I said, raising my glass again, here's to my sister-in-law, Victoria, the woman who spent 5 years planning the destruction of my marriage over a real estate deal that would have cost her husband his pension. The woman who manipulated my wife into an affair with a cocaine addict and embezzler. The woman who turned my family into her personal revenge fantasy. I looked around the room at all the shocked faces. I'm sure you all have questions about your friend Victoria, about what kind of person she really is, about what other schemes she might be running. I'd suggest you ask her, but I don't think she's very good at telling the truth. Victoria finally found her voice. You bastard! You have no idea what you've done. I know exactly what I've done, I replied. I've given you the same thing you gave me. Public humiliation, destroyed relationships, and a scandal that will follow you for years. People were already heading for the door. Richard was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Marta was crying quietly in the corner. I finished my wine and set the glass down on Victoria's expensive coffee table. Thanks for the party, I said. It was everything I hoped it would be. The story spread through Minneapolis social circles like wildfire. Within a week, Victoria had been dropped by her country club, her charity boards, and most of her friends. Richard filed for divorce, citing emotional cruelty and fraud, Apparently, Victoria had been using their joint accounts to fund her revenge scheme without his knowledge. Jake was arrested 3 days after the party. The investigation into his financial crimes had expanded to include money laundering and tax evasion. He was looking at serious prison time. Marta moved in with her mother and started therapy. She'd finally understood how thoroughly she'd been manipulated. But the damage to our marriage was irreparable. We agreed to an amicable divorce. She would get half of what was left after paying the legal fees, and I would keep the house and primary custody of the kids. Louise and I had become friends through our shared experience. She'd left Marta's agency and started her own consulting firm. We met for coffee once a week, comparing notes on how our former enemies were faring. Victoria's working at a strip mall insurance office now, Louise reported over lattes at our usual cafe. Apparently, her reputation in the advertising world is completely shot. What about Jake? Plea deal. 3 years minimum security, but he has to pay back everything he stole. His family disowned him after the trial. I felt a satisfaction that was probably unhealthy, but I didn't care. These people had tried to destroy my life for sport. They'd earned everything that happened to them. Emma came home from college that weekend. She'd been following the drama on social media and had some questions. Dad, are you okay? Really okay? We were sitting on the back porch, watching Charlie chase squirrels in the yard. The same porch where Marta and I used to drink coffee on Sunday mornings, back when I thought we were happy. I'm better than okay, I told my daughter. I'm free. Do you hate Mom? I considered the question. Did I hate Marta? She'd been manipulated, but she'd also made choices. She'd chosen to believe Victoria's lies because they gave her permission to do what she wanted to do anyway. She'd chosen to humiliate me to her friends. She'd chosen to plan a future with another man using my money. No, I said finally. I don't hate her, but I don't love her anymore either. Emma nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Maybe watching your parents' marriage implode gives you insights into human nature that most 20-year-olds don't have. What happens now? Now I figure out what I want the rest of my life to look like. That night, after Emma went to bed, I sat in my home office and looked at the evidence I'd collected. Boxes of documents, printed emails, recorded conversations, the complete record of how my marriage had been systematically destroyed and how I'd systematically destroyed my destroyers in return. I thought about the man I'd been a year ago. Trusting, naive, willing to believe the best about people, even when all the evidence pointed to the worst. That man was gone, replaced by someone harder, more calculating, more dangerous. I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but it was the truth. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the news about Victoria. Well played. If you ever want to compare notes about revenge, I know where to find you. I stared at the message for a long time. Someone else who'd been wronged. Someone else who'd decided to fight back. Part of me was tempted to respond, to find out what their story was. Instead, I deleted the message and turned off my phone. I'd had enough of other people's games. From now on, I was playing by my own rules. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in November. Marta and I sat in our lawyers' offices signing papers that officially ended 15 years of marriage. She looked older, sadder, but also somehow relieved. We were both ready to move on. I'm sorry, she said as we walked out of the courthouse together, for everything. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it. I know, I replied. I'm sorry too, for what I had to do to Victoria, for the way it all ended. We stood there for a moment, two people who'd once promised to love each other forever, now strangers again. Take care of yourself, Evan. You too, Marta. She walked away toward her car, and I walked toward mine. We were heading in different directions, literally and figuratively. That evening, I had dinner with Louise at a new restaurant downtown. We'd been seeing each other regularly for months now, though neither of us was ready to call it dating. We were both too scarred by our recent experiences for anything serious. Any regrets? She asked over dessert. I thought about it. Did I regret destroying Victoria's life? Did I regret exposing Jake's crimes? Did I regret ending my marriage in such a spectacular fashion? No, I said. They made their choices. I made mine. Everyone got what they deserved. Even you? Especially me. We walked back to my car through the Minneapolis streets, past the places where my old life had played out. The restaurant where Marta and I had our first date, the hotel where she'd met Jake, the bar where Victoria used to hold court with her society friends. All of it felt like ancient history now. My phone rang as I was driving home. It was Emma, calling from her dorm room. Hey, Dad, just wanted to check in. How did the divorce go? It's official. Your mom and I are both free to start over. Are you happy about that? I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a moment, looking at my house. My house now, not ours. The place where I'd build whatever came next. Yeah, I said, I think I am. After hanging up, I sat in the quiet darkness for a few more minutes. Charlie was waiting for me on the other side of the front door, probably wondering where I'd been all day. Tomorrow I had work, and next weekend Emma was coming home for Thanksgiving break. Life was moving forward, the way it always does. But tonight, in the silence of my car in my driveway, I allowed myself one last moment of satisfaction. I'd been betrayed, humiliated, and nearly destroyed by people who thought I was too weak to fight back. They'd learned otherwise. Victoria was working at a strip mall insurance office. Her social standing destroyed, her marriage over, her reputation in ruins. Jake was in prison, his career finished, his future bleak. Marta was starting over from scratch, finally understanding the price of her choices. And me? I was sitting in my own driveway, in front of my own house, with my own life spread out ahead of me, like an unwritten book. I'd won. Not just the battle, but the war. Getting out of the car, I walked to my front door with a smile on my face. Charlie greeted me with his usual enthusiasm, and I scratched behind his ears while looking around at my quiet, peaceful home. Just you and me now, boy, I said. And that's exactly how I want it. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat in my favorite chair, the one Marta had always said was too old and shabby for the living room. It felt perfect. Outside, Minneapolis went about its business, full of people living their lives, making their choices, dealing with their consequences. Some of them were probably plotting betrayals of their own. Some were probably being betrayed. The cycle would continue. But I was done with all of that. I'd played the game, won decisively, and now I was retiring from the field. I raised my glass in a toast to my empty living room. To new beginnings, I said out loud, and to making sure the people who try to destroy you learn to regret it. Charlie wagged his tail like he approved. I finished my whiskey and went to bed, sleeping better than I had in years.